What would you say the big three, maybe three recommendations for individuals to not just be a pawn in the game here and still be able to take in information without putting themselves in isolation for fear that they're going to take in information that they don't like, but still be able to operate without getting so wrapped up in this group says, this side, my identity's tied to this, or what have you.
Yeah. So another framework that I think could help people understand kind of what we're getting at, because it is a bit of an amorphous thing, is 2 points. One of them, I think another way to break down what ubiquitous assimilation is, or how it has happened, is that never before in modern history, recorded history, has there been so many channels to distribute information and reach people. Like that's what you're talking about with the billboards, the phones, banner ads, all this other stuff. So that is what has given the messaging its ubiquitous nature. It can be anywhere. It's like an omnipresent, message that's being promoted. And as a group of people, as a society, we haven't really had to deal with that until very recently, the last few years. And so people have never had to question or worry about taking in too much information. Back in the day, and how long and for how many decades people espoused the benefit of knowledge and education. And so I think sometimes there's a false equivalency between information and knowledge.
They're not the same, not even close.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like if one doesn't even approach it that way, then they may feel that they're doing a good job by taking in more info. Oh, I'm so informed. I've learned so much. Did you know this? Did you hear this? Did you hear that? Did you hear that? But if someone is only, so then the assimilation is the taking it in, looking at it as absolute fact, as absolute truth, you know what I mean? And then not really sitting with the info very long to process it, to digest it, to then cross-check it with something else that may have been the message 2 years ago, and then ask yourself, or even maybe 2 weeks ago, hold up, is there some sort of misalignment with something? Was there something, did they go in and edit the message? What did they edit out?
And are you talking about the same body or the same group of people or the same individual parroting two different things within a short span of time that are almost absolute opposites?
Yeah. Because that can happen. And
happens very frequently.
Now, yeah. So people don't get all, I acknowledge that sometimes there are redactions, there are changes because new things come to light. And it's like, hey, what we said was wrong, let's change it. And I'm all for that. If something was wrong, feel free to correct it, right? But keep that in mind the next time you get some message projected to you and you see it, you hear it, someone tells you about it, and you immediately start to believe it. Like, hey, this could be another one of those instances where 2 weeks from now, a year from now, 20 years from now, it comes out that this was incorrect or that there was something wrong with this message. So let me not treat this incoming message with the highest priority as an SOS, like it's that important.
Like it's an emergency?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like it's an emergency because somebody might pull up to your house trying to goddamn rescue you, and then they're like, oh shit, you were just in the bathtub and wanted someone to bring you your towel, goddamn. Like, that's not an emergency. And so my tips would really be, first and foremost, I would recommend when you set up your phone, right, if you've already set it up, make sure you disable all that personalized ad shit. Make sure you disable, your phone in the background listening to you. Like me personally, I'm not a fan of these Amazon Alexas, the Google Voice shit, Siri bullshit, any of this bullshit. That's just another way for them to get consent to tap your life. I ain't with any of that. So the thing people got to keep in mind is when you agree to that, because some folks might say, well, they're going to market to me. They're going to show me ads anyway. I'd rather have the ads be relevant. All right, cool. I hear you. But also ask yourself, are you really in a good habit? Do you need to buy all this shit that they're selling to you? How are these things affecting your life? These things that they're selling to you, maybe those are other Trojan horses to get more access to message to you more. A lot of people don't realize coming down the pipeline is a stream of personalized advertisements that follow you around. You know what I mean? That move with you in real life. And right now it's tied to your cell phone, tied to your social media, but it could get far more pervasive than people could possibly imagine, and it's like if you don't take those steps now to mitigate that, it could potentially make the problem far worse. It could exacerbate it. So cut those things off, and there's going to be a lower chance that the information they send to you could strike a nerve. Because when it's all personalized, they have a pretty good algorithm to know what message to hit you with that can get you riled up, that can get you fired up. And if you go ahead and you make that one change, at least now it's much more likely the information you get is kind of going to be neutral because they kind of, they only have so much information now. They're moving off of past data and you may be changing and they don't update that stuff to keep pressing your button really crazy. The other thing I would say is just unplug from some of these sources, like, because I've been in this as well, and a phenomenon some people refer to it as is called present shock. There's this author, something Rushkoff, Daniel or David or something Rushkoff, but he wrote a book called Present Shock and Future Shock. Future Shock was the first one. But present shock is this concept of being overwhelmed with too many things happening concurrently in the present moment. And so people experience present shock when they are, let's say, recording a podcast right now, but then there's something going on social media and they want to be present for the thing on social media. It's basically trying to be in multiple places at one time and experience things that are happening in the concurrent moment and how that can kind of discombobulate and disorient an individual. And taking in all this information does the same thing if you start to take in too much of it, because it's like you read one story and then you read another one and then you read some op-ed and you look into this other thing and it's like, back in the day, somebody might have one newspaper to go through in a day, right? Now, people have some new tweet coming out every few minutes. There's a new article every few seconds, and if you're not really in a practice of being in control of how much you're allowing new information to flow into you daily, I'm not saying don't take in new information. It's not what either of us are saying. But be mindful of how much new information you are assimilating on a regular basis before you have really processed the information that you took in prior. Because then it's just like if every day somebody's going to class and they're learning something new, but they're never tested to see if they actually know the information. Like eventually you just like there's this overflow and information starts spilling out of your head and you start to forget older shit because you're like your brain can literally only hold so much information. A lot of people are dumber than they realize. You know what I'm saying? Like, no offense. You know what I'm saying? This is, it just is what it is. We could take IQ tests and then that would demonstrate that fact alone. But, not say that's the only way to measure somebody's intellect. Yeah. But all my point is the average person, and hopefully if you listen to this, you're not average, you're above average. But the average person is far less in tune with wisdom and knowledge than they may think. But rather they're in tune with messaging, they're in tune with the trend. Mm-hmm. But once again, that's not a one-for-one for knowledge or wisdom or discernment. So I think that was only 2 recommendations. But yeah, man. Cut the TV. Don't have a TV. Don't subscribe to most of these news sources. And people are like, where do I get my information from? What do I do? Listen, man. You're going to have to go to some non-traditional means, or you're going to have to understand that just because it's in one of these publications does not mean it's true. And just because it comes from an alternative source doesn't mean it's true. You know what I mean? Try to find some base layer truth. 1 + 1 is 2. Unless you're talking about imaginary numbers, unless you're starting to do some real weird shit with the mathematics, that's a real baseline thing, right? Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. That's baseline, And obviously those are scientific examples, but try to find the baselines and then build on top of those things. Don't just take shoddy scaffolding and then try to stand on and be worried while, wonder why the shit broke. Like, nigga, it was shoddy. They threw it up really fast. Mm.
Yeah. So the 2 recommendations are what?
So the 2 recommendations.
Distill them down. 2 recommendations are
disable any personalized advertising, any microphone listening on your cell phone, your connected devices, cut all that shit off. Mm-hmm. The second one is to control the flow of new information, right? So basically just be in better control of how you take in new info, whether that's how many podcasts you listen to a day, the type of podcast, how many news damn stories you're reading through a day, how many news sources you have coming in, newsletters, just tweets you're reading, just mitigate how much information you're taking in a day. Be more selective with the information you choose to take in. Because if somebody wants to continue to grow and excel and improve in a towards a destination, they're ultimately going to need to cultivate certain skills, certain techniques, certain abilities to get there. So maybe it's a better idea to choose what you're going to learn and what you're going to figure out, and then maybe allow for 20% of new information that comes in freely, as opposed to 80% of this free information flowing in that you don't really audit or check, and then only having 20% of that bandwidth to deliberately learn something new, because there's a capacity there is a true capacity at place of what somebody can take in and process, and if you're not controlling how that gets filled up, you can wind up shit out of luck.